These blasts from the past left an unforgettable mark. When fishermen head out to sea, they hope to return with a full net. But one captain hauls in a catch that might just sink him.
It's October 2022, and Captain Glenn Westcott and his crew are fishing off the coast of Rhode Island. It's a family operation, so helping him man the rigging are his son and nephew.
As they haul their catch and drop it on deck, fish are flopping around everywhere. That's when Captain Glenn notices something unusual.
Mixed with the fish is a large, corroded metal barrel. But it doesn't look like a normal barrel like an oil drum. It's covered with all these bolts and metal plates, and it's really heavy.
The captain's first move is to call the Coast Guard, who then races a boat out to evacuate the crew. The Coast Guard quickly realizes that they're in over their head, so they call in the Navy.
When the Navy explosive experts arrive, they lose no time in identifying the threat. It's a World War II Mk6 depth charge, loaded with 270 pounds of TNT. It's enough to bring down a small building.
During World War II, depth charges played a vital role, serving as a primary defense against German U-boats.
After these depth charges roll off the back of a destroyer escort or a frigate, they sink very rapidly, and when they reach a specific depth, which has been preset by the crew, the pressure fuse triggers the bomb, and it goes off, and it sends a shock wave, and that shock wave reaches the enemy submarine hull and crushes it.
The goal was to sink any submarines lurking in the area. In some cases, multiple ships would rain down hundreds of depth charges, hoping one of them will cause the destruction of the U-boat.
Based on where it was found, naval historians believe this particular depth charge was dropped in one of the final sea battles of the war.
So in May 1945, a Coast Guard frigate and a Navy destroyer spotted German submarine, U-853, just 2 miles off the coast of Rhode Island.
The two American ships unleashed a barrage of 195 depth charges, hoping to sink the sub. Eventually, the relentless pounding sent the German U-boat to the ocean's floor.
Apparently, not all those depth charges detonated, because here one is, 80 years later, in Captain Glenn's net.
All of those control measures that are in the depth charge to keep it from going off have all corroded. It really could go off at any minute. So the Navy works with the Coast Guard to set up a perimeter to ensure that nobody gets too close.
The Navy carefully removes this from the fishing boat. They take it out to sea. They're a mile offshore. They put other explosives around it, and they detonate it. And as an explosion, bystanders said they could feel on the shore.
I know fishermen are full of tall tales about the one that got away, but in this case, I'm sure that Captain Glenn and his crew were happy to let this one go.
When you're digging in your yard, you have to be careful. You could hit a pipe, sprinkler line, or if you're really unlucky, something much more dangerous.
In 1993, in the Spring Valley section of Washington, D.C., a construction crew is preparing to dig a trench. They're surrounded by some of the fanciest houses in D.C., the kind of place where your next-door neighbor might be a U.S. senator or an ambassador.
A backhoe operator fires up his engine and begins digging. Suddenly, the bucket on his backhoe hits something and makes a large clang. He climbs out of the machine to go down and have a closer look.
As he peers down into the hole, he's stunned. What he's hit isn't a rock, and it looks pretty alarming. It's metal and shaped like a foot-long bullet.
They are panicked, so the crew calls the fire department. When they see it, they panic and call the cops. And yes, the cops also panic, so they call the bomb squad. The bomb squad confirms that this is a real World War I mortar shell.
Concerned there could be more bombs buried nearby, the authorities carefully search the rest of the area.
They find dozens more of these mortar shells. Of course, they immediately evacuate 25 of the surrounding homes, and they call in the Army to try to get a handle on the situation.
Even though these shells are old and corroded, they're still alive, therefore still dangerous. So they could explode.
When the Army arrives, they start carefully removing these shells, and within a few days, they've uncovered 140 of these.
However, what looks like standard ammunition hides an even deadlier secret.
These shells were not designed to kill and maim through fragmentation. It's worse than that because this site used to be home to a U.S. Army chemical weapons depot. Inside of these shells are some of the deadliest chemical compounds known to humankind.
World War I broke out in 1914, and it was the first war that started since the Industrial Revolution. A lot of new weapons were being tried out for the first time, and one of the worst of these was chemical weapons.
Highly poisonous compounds like mustard gas were loaded into shells and fired at the enemy. When they hit, they'd unleash a cloud of death. They would burn and blister flesh, destroy soldiers' lungs, cause blindness, and often they'd lead to an excruciating, painful death.
In 1917, as the United States is preparing to intervene in the First World War, it establishes a chemical weapons service in the U.S. Army. The new U.S. Army Chemical Service enters into an agreement with the new American University, and together they establish this facility called Camp Leach.
There they tested chemicals on soldiers' skin, tried out new designs of gas masks, and they developed toxic chemical compounds, loaded them into mortars, and fired them there, right on site.
But before the new weapons could be sent to the front, Germany surrendered and the war was over. Camp Leach was shut down. They dug pits in the ground, stuffed the chemical weapons in, and just buried them.
At the time, the military thought these chemicals will dissipate on their own. So no one really thought much when 10 years later, 1928, the ground was turned over to developers to build what would become this ritzy neighborhood.
Now, 7 decades later, these canisters remain just as lethal as the day they were buried, making this wealthy neighborhood a dangerous minefield.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and several private hazardous waste disposal companies have been working to try to bring this problem under control, but the problem keeps getting bigger and bigger. They'll clean up one burial site of former World War I chemical weapons and then immediately find another one.
The Spring Valley site is about 661 acres of land, and nearly 1,600 private homes, several embassies, an American university sit atop this collection of toxic chemicals.
In the end, it takes the government nearly 30 years and $250 million to clean up the mess. They remove over 1,000 military shells filled with the deadliest chemicals and poisons man has ever developed. And yes, today they say they think they've got it all. But honestly, if I were buying a house, I'd be looking for a discount.
Monsters are out there, and sometimes they're closer than you think. Something taking over your brain is a nightmare, but what if it took over your whole body?
In 2021, a film crew is making a nature documentary about the harsh conditions British wildlife face in the winter. They're shooting around the grounds of Castle Espa in Northern Ireland in an old abandoned gunpowder shed. And as they're looking around, they see a dead spider hanging from the ceiling.
Now, it's not particularly unusual to find a dead spider, but this documentary crew are keen observers of wildlife.
Volunteers from a local wetlands conservation group are assisting the filmmakers, and they notice something strange about this dead spider. First, it's an orb weaver spider. These are usually found in deep, dark caves, not in man-made spaces.
Even weirder, the spider has a lacy white fungus erupting out of its body.
Intrigued, the team sends a photo to fungus expert Dr. Harry Evans.
When he looks closely at the spider, Evans is surprised. It looks like the fungus has infested the spider, eating it from the inside out.
This isn't just an infection, it's a hostile takeover. And he believes it's never been seen before.
After the film project is over, Evans requests a sample of the dead spider. And he then puts together a team to look for more of them.
They hunt for evidence near caves, and sure enough, they find more of these orb weaver spiders that have crawled out of the darkness.
Though orb weavers naturally prefer dark, dank, tight spaces, something in the fungus is compelling them to go towards the light before they die.
What the crew has stumbled upon is no ordinary fungus. It's something much more diabolical.
The fungus doesn't just destroy its host, it manipulates it. It works by flooding the spider's system with mind-altering chemicals like dopamine, which can control its movement and also helps create a false sense of feeling good.
The hijacked spiders leave their lair and fulfill the parasite's wishes by moving closer to the mouth of the cave before dying. This is so the air currents can better disperse the spores to find new victims.
It's like the fungus is turning the spiders into zombies.
Similar parasitic fungi have been found to attack wasps and ants, but this is the first time it's ever been found in a stronger, more resilient animal.
The research team has continued to examine the fungus, trying to understand its origin and whether it might have beneficial applications in agriculture or medicine.
After all, whatever the fungus is doing to control the spider's brain, it's extraordinary. There's even speculation that it could potentially provide new treatments for diseases like Alzheimer's.
While it's nice to look on the bright side of finding a zombie spider fungus, one unsettling fact remains. 95% of the fungus species on the planet have yet to be discovered.
So if nature has already created a zombie spider fungus, who's to say there isn't out there somewhere a zombie human fungus just waiting to be found?
Say you're a student at a typical public high school in Los Angeles. Everything seems normal until one day construction workers uncover something remarkable and terrifying.
It's June 2022, and construction workers are renovating San Pedro High School, some 20 miles south of Los Angeles. While digging a trench, they find something unexpected: a dense layer of shells.
This isn't just like a bunch of shells you'd find on the beach. The school is about 2 miles inland and 800 feet above sea level, so shells really shouldn't be here.
Thinking that something might be unusual, construction stops and they call in a team of consultants to investigate.
When the scientists arrive, they're excited at what they see. The deposit is unlike anything ever before found in California. This shell bank is incredibly dense, and they estimate that it's probably 120,000 years old.
As the researchers excavate around the shells, they begin to find fossilized animal bones. Lots of them. Massive piles of fish and mammal bones. It appears to be an enormous marine graveyard packed with millions of fossils. And this collection is much older than the shells. Scientists estimate that it's 9 million years old.
One of the most amazing discoveries is a saber-toothed salmon. This isn't like the salmon you'll find in your sushi roll. This is a massive fish. It's 8 feet long and nearly 400 pounds, making it the largest salmon to ever exist. They had razor-sharp spikes, which they used to defend their territory in prehistoric waters.
Nearby, researchers also find vertebrae of a colossal baleen whale, a behemoth 100 feet long. Alongside it, they come across remains of sea turtles, ancient clams, and birds. And then, probably the most fearsome discovery of them all, the megalodon.
This is an ancient shark, over 80 feet in length. That's 3 times larger than a modern-day great white. It's believed to be one of the largest and most fearsome marine predators of all time.
It consumed 2,500 pounds of prey every day, including whales and other sharks.
This shark had a massive mouth packed with 276 teeth, each of which is the size of your hand, and they discovered many of them at the dig.
Long before it was a high school campus, this ground was part of the ocean floor, an ancient marine graveyard teeming with giants.
Based on fossil evidence, San Pedro might have been near a now lost prehistoric island. Scientists think that millions of years ago, heavy storms might have swept marine life from this island into a canyon, burying them under layers of sediment, where San Pedro High School is standing today.
Then around 9 million years ago, local volcanic eruptions helped to seal these fossils in place, preserving them for all time.
In total, the team uncovers remains from more than 200 different species, with some like the saber-toothed salmon having never been found before in Southern California.
Scientists have now moved from cataloging bones to reconstructing how this lost prehistoric ecosystem functioned, how it changed, and how it shapes the world we live in today.
For students, the discovery of this marine graveyard turns their campus into a prehistoric wonderland. Many take active roles in excavating and cataloging the specimens, giving them opportunities that most students can only dream of.
The scientific team and students excavate fossils side by side for more than 2 years.
For them, history isn't in a textbook or in a museum, it's here, right beneath their feet.
Don't just tell us a story, they warn us of what else may be buried beneath our feet. When you think of Yellowstone, you might picture roaming bison, beautiful nature, or peace and quiet. But beneath the ground, something deadly is stirring, and it could strike any day.
In 1965, NASA begins a mission to map the surface of the Earth from space. They plan to use state-of-the-art cameras mounted on satellites, but to make sure the images they are getting are accurate, NASA decides to make a control set of pictures on the ground at Yellowstone.
They're making this map of Yellowstone so that they have a baseline, and the person in charge, his name is Bob Christensen.
Yellowstone has the ideal geology to do this because the park is just chock full of geysers and these natural pools, all of which can test the real accuracy of these cameras.
Because Christensen is also a geologist, the National Park Service also has him collect rock samples that are later carbon dated.
These rock samples reveal something strange.
It turns out that most of the rock in Yellowstone is made up of something called rhyolite, which only occurs when you have lava flowing or volcanic explosions. But there are no active volcanoes in Yellowstone.
Still, Christensen's data doesn't lie. The bulk of the park's geology is the result of several massive eruptions over the last 2 million years.
There are hundreds of unique geological features across the park. So Christensen's first thought is that these were the product of an ancient volcano chain that has long since gone dormant.
But when NASA's satellite mapping of the park is finally finished in 1972, Christensen is shocked by what the infrared pictures reveal.
What the images tell him is that the unique geological features of Yellowstone were not, as he thought, formed by an ancient chain of volcanoes, but by a single supervolcano.
Of the over 1,000 volcanoes we know of on Earth, only about 20 are supervolcanoes. And this is one of the biggest ever found.
The biggest of these eruptions took place 2 million years ago. This eruption launched as much as 600 cubic miles of red-hot lava and rocks into the air. This is an explosion 2,500 times bigger than the Mount St. Helens eruption.
Surprisingly, Yellowstone's fury may not be finished.
Even though it has been dormant for 500,000 years, lava still flows in this massive supervolcano underneath Yellowstone National Park.
But in 2022, what scientists uncover is far more alarming than anyone imagined.
A study published in the journal Science shows that lava chambers under the park are rapidly filling.
This, combined with the fact that Yellowstone has over 3,000 earthquakes a year, leads some to speculate that the supervolcano may be preparing to erupt once again.
If the next eruption is anything like the last one, it would spew enough debris into the sky to block out the sun in the western United States for decades, leading to widespread famine and economic collapse.
Considering the Yellowstone supervolcano has remained dormant for over 500,000 years, let us hope for another 500,000 at least.
Not all threats erupt. Some, like one frozen killer in Siberia, melt.
In a small town in northwest Siberia, a farmer is surprised to find the carcass of one of his reindeer. Now, it's not unusual. Every now and then, an animal will die of some kind of natural causes. But over the next month, other local farmers watch as more and more reindeer livestock get sick and die.
In all, over 1,200 reindeer end up dying. At first, the villagers chalk it up to the stress the animals are undergoing due to that summer's unusually high temperatures. But then, suddenly, the villagers start getting sick.
"90 villagers fall critically ill and are hospitalized. Tragically, one sick child dies.
Doctors are completely baffled. They're running blood tests and throat swabs, but every test that they run ends up coming back negative.
Then finally, one test comes back positive, and the result is shocking.
It's Bacillus anthracis, but we know it more commonly as anthrax.
Most people think of anthrax as a biological weapon, but it actually occurs naturally in soils throughout the world. When animals like reindeer graze, they kick up the spores and form little dust clouds, and then the animals can inhale this and become infected.
Once it's in the body, the bacteria grows quickly. It causes fevers and difficulty breathing. And after an infected animal dies, its body decomposes, spilling even more anthrax spores right back into the earth.
The spores can sit there for decades, like this ticking time bomb, just waiting for its next unfortunate host. Even with treatment, the fatality rate in humans can be as high as around 80%.
As government officials rush to figure out the source, they discover that in the early 1900s, Siberia was ravaged by a series of terrible anthrax outbreaks.
More than 1 million reindeer died, with their infected carcasses sprawled out everywhere across this tundra.
Some of those remains were frozen in the permafrost, essentially refrigerating the dead deer and the bacteria inside of them.
But then, starting in the year 2011, the area has 5 years of unusually warm summers.
And the extreme heat begins to melt the permafrost, exposing dormant anthrax spores.
To contain the outbreak, officials scour the tundra, burning thousands of infected reindeer carcasses and vaccinating tens of thousands of living reindeer.
Gradually, this works, and the number of new cases begins to slow and then eventually completely stop.
But it's very likely that more pathogens lie frozen under the Arctic ice.
If rising temperatures continue to melt the permafrost, it is very likely that animals and humans will be exposed to these ancient pathogens, which modern humans have never had exposure to before. As one researcher puts it, this is Pandora's box.